A scientist doesn't study nature for its utility. He studies it for the pleasure it brings him. And it brings him pleasure because it's beautiful. I'm speaking of the intimate beauty that arises from a harmonious ordering of elements, and that may be grasped by a pure intelligence. Intellectual beauty is sufficient. It's as if time were a fourth dimension of space, and as if the four-dimensional space resulting from the combination of ordinary space and time could rotate. What should one think of the question, is Euclidean geometry true? It's meaningless. One geometry cannot be more true than another. It can only be more convenient. In other terms, Euclidean geometry. Sometimes, slight differences in initial conditions bring about huge variations in the resulting phenomena. Prediction becomes impossible, and we are left with an aleatory phenomenon. Perhaps we'll also have to elaborate a whole new mechanics, one we have but a glimpse of now, where inertia would increase with velocity, making the velocity of light an impassable barrier. Ordinary mechanics, being simpler, would then be a first...
"1905. A man is writing a 70-page scientific paper on a new mechanics. In many respects, the work resembles a paper that Einstein will publish in a few months, and which will be viewed as the foundation of the special theory of relativity. You are this man, Professor Poincaré, are you not? Why is it that your name is not also associated with the discovery of relativity? Why is it that you, one of the great scientific geniuses, are known only to experts? What happened to you, Professor Poincaré? Never mind, we'll let you get on with your work. You know, your story is also our story, the history of the emergence of our scientific worldview. A history that begins in 1854 in Nancy. Is it the harmonious geometry of the Place Stanislas that sparks your passion for mathematics? You're home as a child. When very young, you fall ill with diphtheria and nearly perish. Luckily, your mother takes good care of you, along with your father, a physician who enjoys traveling with his family. Your sister, who is very close to you, tells of your precocity, your intuition, your capacity for invention. Inside your head, she says, the lessons you learn at school fall naturally into place. You are excited by popular science books, especially Louis Figuier's The Earth Before the Great Flood. You are a gifted child indeed, but just what is it that makes you a genius? At the age of 16, your world is upended. Prussian forces invade Nancy in 1870 and take quarters with civilians. Quickly you learn German and set about gleaning news of the war. At the age of 19, you are the top-ranked student entering the elite École Polytechnique in Paris. The atmosphere at Polytechnique is intensely competitive. You keep your mother informed by letter of your standing and your state of health. Then comes graduate work at the School of Mines. The competitive pressure is off, and you devote more time to mathematics. You publish your first research paper. Have you already chosen your career path, Professor Poincaré? Or has your career chosen you? Nadar, the famous photographer, jumps in a hot air balloon for a bird's-eye view of Paris. His friend Jules Verne sends men to the moon, and everyone is keen on astronomy. Mathematicians deal with spaces of 4 dimensions or more, and they elaborate abstract conceptions of 3 space. Gauss, Lobachevsky, Riemann and others discover new geometries that shock philosophers, provoke debate among physicists and inspire artists. Your genius, Professor Poincaré, is surely geometric. You pass with ease from the classical geometry of Euclid to non-Euclidean geometries, where through a point on a plane distinct from any straight line, infinitely many parallel lines can pass. You are so much at home with these strange geometries that you naturally see their properties manifest in other domains of mathematics, like that of analysis.
For 15 days, I'd been trying to prove the inexistence of functions analogous to those I've since called Fuchsian functions. I was terribly ignorant then. Every day, I'd sit behind my desk. I'd spend an hour or 2 trying out a great number of combinations, obtaining not the slightest result. And one evening, I drank some black coffee, which was not my habit, and I couldn't fall asleep. Ideas kept coming at me from all directions. I felt as if they were knocking each other about until 2 of them hooked up, in a manner of speaking, to form a stable combination. At that moment, I left Caen, where I was living at the time, to participate in a geological field trip organised by the School of Mines. The circumstances of the trip took my mind off my mathematical work. When we arrived in Coutances, we boarded an omnibus destined for some place or other. At the moment I placed my foot on the step, the idea came to me, unannounced by the thoughts I'd had earlier, that the transformations I'd used to define Fuchsian functions were identical to those of non-Euclidean geometry.
Isn't that just like you, Professor Poincaré? Intuition, yes, intuition, coupled with the intellectual audacity that lets you perform such an original transposition. And not only that, but another characteristic preoccupation is evident here, the desire to understand the workings of your own mind. In your later years, you will describe in quite modern terms the workings of a mathematician's unconscious, which you find to be guided by a feeling for mathematical beauty, for the harmony of numbers and of forms, for geometric elegance. For the moment, however, this discovery of yours marks you as one of the world's most brilliant mathematicians. You are only 26 years old. Your ascension is now a rapid one. You travel across Europe, meeting other great minds, some of whom you already know by correspondence. But you remain a solitary seeker, often disorganized, unconcerned by the details of mathematical proofs, attracted by pristine subjects. Later, you will lay the groundwork for a new field of mathematics called topology. You recognize how one surface can be continuously deformed into another. A teacup, for example, is the same, topologically speaking, as a torus thanks to its handle. Few mathematicians can boast of founding a new branch of mathematics. 1885. In Paris, Bartholdi's Statue of Liberty is assembled and shipped off to New York. Across the Atlantic, just as in Europe, the modern world invents its symbols. Another draped goddess, the fairy of electricity, is erected and illuminates the world, banishing obscurity with Edison's incandescent light bulb. While innovative technologies abound, electric lighting is by far the most prodigious and lovely of them all, carrying with it the hopes and dreams of a science-based future. The marvels of the 1889 World's Fair in Paris attract some 30 million visitors. Thanks to electric lighting, opening hours are extended to midnight. Built for the occasion, the Eiffel Tower is wrapped in ribbons of light and is crowned by a powerful beacon. The Eiffel Tower, a transparent symbol of the innocent childhood of modernity, is criticized by leading artists. A monument needs to be dressed, they say. To his critics, Gustave Eiffel responds that the beauty of his tower is that of a curve calculated to offer the least wind resistance. This unadorned tower must have delighted you, Professor Poincaré. Reduced to essentials, not unlike your investigations of the underlying structure of geometric reasoning. Poised as ever to solve interesting problems, you become a physicist and study the propagation of electromagnetic waves. The same waves that will soon be transmitted from an antenna on the Eiffel Tower. You will also study the origin of tides and how the solar system was formed. The moon, you say, was originally part of the Earth. In 1889, King Oscar II of Sweden awards you his grand prize for your seminal work on the three-body problem. Using Newton's law of gravitation, it's not too difficult to predict the paths that two celestial bodies will follow. But when a third body appears on the scene, this prediction is highly challenging, defying the best efforts of Newton and Laplace. Beyond the mathematical aspect of the three-body problem, what is at stake here is the stability of the solar system. You develop analytical methods in your prize paper, Professor Poincaré. You show that a slight difference in the initial conditions of such a system can bring about a huge variation in the resulting path of the small planet. Your work will stimulate further research on dynamic systems, leading ultimately to chaos theory in the late 20th century. The mathematical physicist, faced with complex phenomena, is thus able to reveal a subjacent order and thereby mathematize what is formally unpredictable. Or is this hidden order just in our minds, being the consequence of our particular immersion in the world? As your scientific work progresses, Professor Poincaré, scientific thought itself occupies your thoughts more and more. Your scientific activity has made of you a philosopher of science, or were you one from the start? You publish ambitious philosophical writings that are immediate bestsellers. 80,000 of your books are sold, an impressive number for the time. Is this a question of timing? At the turn of the 20th century, as seen in the early films of the Lumiere brothers, a new worldview was clearly called for. The Paris World's Fair of 1900 attracts millions of visitors like the one before it. New technologies continue to fascinate the crowds. The latest marvels include the subway and moving sidewalks. This is, however, also a period of social agitation and polemical debate in France. The separation of church and state is just around the corner. The Dreyfus affair divides political parties, social groups, and even families. On both sides of the French-German border, extreme nationalism is on the rise. For many people, science is marked as ideological. Others ask what the meaning of science is and what values it upholds. Some feel, along with the chemist Berthelot, that science is at its peak, that science reveals the truth about the world and that its principal task is to increase the precision of its predictions by a decimal place or two. But for others, science is morally bankrupt. Old theories are replaced by new ones, but these too are destined to be swept away. Science can lay no claim to truth. Taking examples from the history of physics, you show that certain truths of the old theories are invariably preserved in new ones, such that old theories are never entirely discredited by their successors. Science does not reveal truth absolutely, as scientists adopt certain definitions in the course of their theorizing. Their choices, however, are guided by experience. Your conventionalist theory of knowledge exercises a profound influence on your peers in science and philosophy, and continues to resonate throughout the 20th century. Henceforth, philosophers of science must take account of the linguistic dimension of scientific practice, the history of science, and evolutionary constraints on cognitive development. Maxwell, Hertz, Lorentz, all leading physicists of the late 19th century. They were instrumental in overturning the mechanical worldview in favour of an electromagnetic one. You too contribute to this revolution, although you are surely more aware than most of the basic flaws and imperfections of the new view. In your philosophical writings, you re-examine the fundamental concepts of time, space, force, and motion. Did you find inspiration by watching the pioneering films made by your colleague at the Academy of Science, Étienne Jules Marie? In retrospect, success in turn-of-the-century theoretical physics required a grounding in physics and mathematics, as well as a bold philosophical outlook.
Firstly, there is no absolute space, and we can conceive only of relative motion, and yet mechanical facts are usually expressed as if there were an absolute space to which they could be referred. Secondly, there is no absolute time. When we say that two durations are equivalent, the statement has no meaning on its own, and can only acquire one by convention. Thirdly, not only do we have no direct intuition of the equivalence of two durations, we do not even have a direct intuition of the simultaneity of two events occurring in two different places. Finally, is not our Euclidean geometry itself only a type of linguistic convention? We could express mechanical facts with reference to a non-Euclidean space, which would be less convenient, but just as legitimate as our ordinary space.
Well, Professor Poincaré, your scientific and philosophical work seems to form the foundations of the relativity revolution. Not only that, but you show that the Lorentz transformations form a group. Nonetheless, according to popular history, the relativity revolution would be inspired by someone else. A young man familiar with both your scientific and philosophical work, Albert Einstein. You met him once, without really seeing eye to eye. Here you are in Brussels in 1911, engaged with Marie Curie, your back to Einstein. Why is it that you two did not get along? Did your personalities clash? Or did Franco-German rivalry have something to do with it on the verge of the Great War? It's as if you worked out the fundamentals of a relativistic viewpoint, including the philosophical analysis of our concepts of space and time, only to be outdistanced in the final lap by someone half your age. I suppose it's true, Professor Poincaré. It's all relative. Not just in physics, but in the recognition of posterity as well. You made fundamental contributions to three major theories of 20th century physics: special relativity, quantum theory, and chaos theory. Your work changed the face of modern mathematics and deeply influenced the philosophy of science. But you haven't found your place in the pantheon of scientific greats like Marie Curie and Albert Einstein. Why is this? Wait, Professor Poincaré. Please, don't run off. Don't you have an explanation?
All that is not thought is pure nothingness, since we can think only thought, and all the words we have to speak of things can express only thoughts. To say there's something other than thought is an affirmation which can have no meaning. And yet, a strange contradiction for those who believe in time. Geological history shows us that life is but a short episode between two eternities of death, and that, in this very episode, conscious thought has lasted and will last but a moment. Thought is but a flash in the midst of a long night. Yet this flash is everything.